from committing crimes. So I always pull this number out of the air and say about 90% of us choose to live in the box. Why? Because the law has penalties attached to it, and we don't want to pay for the penalty. Most of us will try and stay somewhere close to the legal limit of driving so we don't get busted. You go too far, you have nothing to say about it. You get busted, and then you have to pay the penalty for it. The same thing goes with more egregious or more dangerous crimes or violation of the laws. So the law acts as a deterrent for those who are deterred from the penalties. We all have a choice. You don't want to pay for the crime, don't do the crime. Everybody with me? So deterrence does that. The last one is what we call reform and rehabilitation. Does this make sense for capital punishment? Now we know, I worked in the county jail system and then a parole department for a period of time, and we knew that if we're going to be able to reform anyone, it was going to be first-time offenders, usually drug and alcohol, who had no criminal background, or at least the first time they got caught. We found out statistically about 33% of them could be turned. You get them to be John citizens again. The rest of them we couldn't. It's called recidivism. It's a revolving door. They come back in again and again and again and again and again. It's a way of life. Once you raise the bar above, let's say, drunk driving or petty crime or B&E of an abandoned warehouse, and you raise the level of criminality, it's always a guess whether you reform someone. You won't know until you let them out to see if they come back again. Now, as long as it's a petty crime and I get it right, good. I turn someone. If I got it wrong, first time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. But it's a petty crime. If it's got a higher level of crime, like stealing, raping, murder, the higher we get. First time I get it wrong, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. So we know reform works. We went through this extensively in the 60s and 70s. But we know it's very limited in its effect, and it works on a minimal number of people, and usually first-time offenders, drug and alcohol. There can be other offenders without drug and alcohol, but usually first-time offenders. We could maybe turn them around and help them get back on straight street. Other than that, it doesn't work very often. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it doesn't. The success rate, at least the statistics we have, don't bear out that it works very well. You can try it on minor crimes all you want, but when you get to higher level crimes and you're wrong about it, you put other people in jeopardy. And the whole point of following the rules is safety zone. And if you don't get it right, then you raise the level of jeopardy for people who aren't doing anything wrong and suffer violence anyway, whether it's crimes against property or crimes against self. So the four aims of punishment: retribution, prevention, deterrence, and reform. You'll see those on your quizzes as well. People who want to retain the death penalty are called retentionists. You might see this. People who want to abolish it, obviously, are called abolitionists. You want to abolish something, you don't want it, you want to retain it, you want it to be there. Now let's talk about the types of murderers. In the day when you had your book, they didn't include two of these, but because I don't have to be stuck with the book, I can expand it to what it needs to be. Number one are terrorists. They have one intent in mind, and that's to create terror and discord among usually civilian populations. Question. Take religious content out. Not all terrorists have a religious backing behind them. They don't have to. They're just... Do you think they're deterred by the death penalty? Timothy McVeigh? Serial killers, do you think they care about the death penalty?
No.
Professional killers? These are interesting hit people. You ever see the movie The Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks? Yeah, and they hired, I knew I was going to do that. Who was the guy who they took a contract on him? Judd Law. It turns out that after the war, Tom Hanks is very good at killing. He becomes a professional killer. He works for a booze runner, and the booze runner's son ends up killing Tom Hanks's son and wife, and it gets a little complicated. And anyway, Tom Hanks is going to kill the booze runner's son. So the booze runner puts a hit out on him, and he puts it on Jude Law. And Jude Law is just a really weird guy. He takes pictures of everybody before they die. So anyway, he's after him. It turns out in the end that Tom Hanks kills the booze runner's son, and supposedly that's the end of it, but nobody told Jude Law. And so he goes to this town called Perdition on the west coast of Michigan by the lake, and Tom Hanks thinks everything's cool, and he's got his oldest son with him, and they go into the cottage, his grandma's cottage or something like that, and the boy runs out to the beach, and there's like a golden retriever, and they're running up and down, and Tom's standing at this big window watching the kid, and the door slowly closes, and of course there's no reflection, and there's Jude Law sitting behind the door waiting to finish the act. See who's paid. He's a professional killer. You don't carry out your hit and you get a hit. They're professionals, and they're usually very good at it. That's why we call them professionals. Do you think they're deterred by the death penalty? Now, premeditated killers, that's how most Capital One crimes are committed, most first-degree murder crimes. These are people think about it and they get all jacked up and they say, you know what, I'm going for it, and they go for it anyway. They just get into that mind frame and decide they're going to do it anyway. Maybe they can escape, maybe they can't. At that point, it doesn't matter. They're seeking justice and they're going to take care of business. Right? So they know what's on the table. They know there's a possibility that they'll get caught. And they go ahead and commit murder anyway. Are they deterred by the death penalty? Well, some are. I don't know if you've ever gotten angry enough. I mean, you know. But most of us, we're rational. We come back across the line. We think about it. It's like suicide. You think about it, maybe you come back across the line. Now, passionate killers, they have no intent to kill. They get into an argument with somebody, something happens, there's a tragedy, someone falls, breaks their neck, whatever, and they die. So there's no intent there. And then finally, there's suicide by cop. They always include that. People suicide by cop do not intend to kill people. They want to be killed. So we have these fake weapons out there that are like composite guns. Glock's probably the most famous one. Looks like a real weapon. You can go into a store and buy one. It looks like a real weapon. You go into a candy store and you pull out the gun to hold the guy up, and the guy's got a gun back there, and he decides to shoot you in defense. And then they find out it was a plastic gun. We call it suicide by cop. Someone doesn't have the nerve to kill themselves, so they put you in jeopardy and have you kill them instead. They're not deterred by the death penalty either because they want to be killed. Okay? So does the death penalty deter killers? Well, it does. If the killers originate here and decide not to cross the line. But we've already examined terrorists, serial killers, professional and premeditated killers, and those people are committed. So why do we have the death penalty? Because the main argument is because it acts as a deterrent. States that use the death penalty have a higher rate of homicides of murders than states that don't. Well, maybe the reason for using the death penalty isn't because it deters, it's because people deserve to be killed when they kill other people. That's the strongest argument for the death penalty, and we'll get to that on Wednesday. But I always bring this up to show you, people who want to kill are going to kill. They don't care about the death penalty, people. That's why we still have, 1,400, I think 83, since 1976, since legal executions have been charged with first-degree murder. And all but 163 of those people, as far as I know, minus the ones that are still on death row, have been executed. There is a legitimate rationale for using the death penalty. You could make a legitimate rationale for it, as long as you leave out the 163 that aren't guilty. People who are committed to killing are not deterred by the death penalty. People who are deterred from committing non-lethal crimes are also deterred from committing murder. Therefore, the death penalty only deters people who are already deterred from committing other non-lethal crimes. If you want to commit murder, you're going to do it. So far, we don't have any way of, what was that? It was a Tom Cruise movie where they could see into the future. The cops had developed some system they could see into the future. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? I forget the name of it, but we don't have that technology, and even in the movie, that was flawed. Oh, I don't want to bring that up for you yet. So any questions about the case law? This, more than all of your quizzes, I think, even abortion, should not be that difficult. This is just straight facts, people. If you get the facts right, you should be able to get 100. So let me keep you for another at least 10 minutes. Let's have some discussion in favor of the death penalty. How many of you raised your hand in favor of the death penalty? What would be some justifications for it?
It's more retribution than anything. I think about if my son was killed, then the only way that I'll ever feel closure is for that to happen to the victim film.
Okay. So there's 2 points there. What's your first name again? Jake. So what Jake said was real interesting. and this is, I'm not making a case for or against, okay? So here's the death penalty, and one of the justifications is retribution, and the rationale is foreclosure. Who else raised their hand? Go ahead.
They're gonna keep doing it anyways, so like if you keep them in jail, we have to pay for them like through the taxes and all that. So if they're not wanting from the state, you might as well like kill them.
No, that's okay, that's okay. So can I put cost in here? Why should your tax dollar support a criminal for the rest of their life? Who else raised their hand? I won't leave you out, I'll get to you.
Just because if they're making the decision to go out and kill somebody or end somebody's life, one or multiple, then same punishment should be to them.
Okay. So yeah, that would be retribution again, so we'll do this for 2. Okay, that's cool.
It's retribution, sir. So I think, honestly, public execution should be utilized. I think that's more of a deterrent for anyone. Today's day and age, everybody says, oh, it's on TV, it's not real. Yeah, wait till you see it in real life.
How many would be okay with public executions again? Oh, so you're for it. Okay, so what's your rationale?
Retribution, same thing he said. That's what I was thinking is closure. Like if someone with my family is killed, I know I want that person to be dead.
Okay, okay.
I think I changed my mind.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay, so you're for it now?
again.
Again?
I'm for it either. I don't mind. Like it's not going to affect me in any sense until it probably does.
Until it probably does. Okay, yeah. So yeah, from the ivory tower, we're cool.
I witnessed it up close. So.
Okay. You're again. Okay, I'll get to against in a minute. That's cool. 4.
I'm just going to go with retribution.
Retribution. Okay. So it's interesting. It's not prevention. It's retribution. Okay, that's cool. And it's not deterrence either. It's retribution. No one believes this deters killers from killing.
No.
Okay, so it's either retribution or deterrence, and so far everybody's into getting an eye for an eye. You know what Gandhi said about that? If we all went for an eye, it'd take about 3 years for the whole world to go blind. You know what else he said? If you plan on killing someone, dig 2 graves. One for you and one for them. I don't know if Gandhi had any wisdom or not, but okay, so that's 4.
Well, I did 2 projects on it, so like a rebuttal against the cost, it's actually like 5 times more expensive to execute someone to have them like in jail for life.
Yes, it is.
13 cents.
Say what?
13 cents.
13.
13 cents is all it costs.
No, that's for the chemical or whatever, but the time for adjudication, for all the times to appeals, he's right.
Yeah, like on average for the death penalty case in Florida, it's like $3 million. And that's coming like straight out of our pocket. And like, I feel like people who, I feel like some people just, when they do things like that, I feel like they kind of want to die. So I feel like you should just, like most people, like when tragedies like that happen, they end up killing themselves. But the cops get to them. I feel like so they don't have to spend that time rotting in prison.
Because it ain't no country club, people. Go ahead.
It's like, it kind of be in between. If you don't kill them and you put them in jail for life, they have to like live with mental suffering, and I think that that's more of a punishment